Big changes rarely happen all at once. The Okami Kai martial arts and fitness, they happen one class at a time.
Hi, I'm Scott.
And I'm Jennifer. We're the owners and instructors at Okami Kai.
Most parents come to us wanting the same things: confidence, focus, and resilience for their kids.
They want a place that feels supportive, not overwhelming. Somewhere their child can try, struggle a little, and learn to keep going.
We've been guiding families in our community for years, and we've seen real growth happen, one class at a time.
Kids learn to listen, try again, and work through challenges, one class at a time.
Parents get to watch confidence build through practice and not pressure, one class at a time.
Okami Kai martial arts and fitness, one class at a time. Visit okamikai.com to get started.
Welcome back to the Okami Kai Chronicles. I'm Scott, and if this is your first time here, this is the podcast where we talk about martial arts, fitness, parenting, and the kind of honest personal development that doesn't require a morning routine involving cold showers and a gratitude journal at 4 a.m. I just got back from Florida, and before anyone says anything, no, I did not come back with a tan. I did, however, come back with a notebook full of ideas and a sentence that's been rattling around in my head that I haven't been able to shake. 4 words, 3 syllables, get your reps in. That's it. That's what I want to talk about today. And I know it sounds like something you'd see on a gym t-shirt, but stay with me, because the more I've sat with it, the more I think it might be one of the most quietly important things you can understand about growth in anything. Training, parenting, your work, your life. We're going to go deep on this one, so stick around. Okay, so first I have to apologize because it has been a couple of months since I did our last episode. And that is, well, quite frankly, because I hate book work. I hate all of the paper stuff. So I am into working in my pajamas and teaching and training. But when it comes down to getting the year end ready, not so much. So anyway, I was a little bit behind. And so I had to focus all my attention on that. But we are back. I am hoping that I can do a more regimented type of schedule. But anyway, I was at the Elevate Studio Growth Summit down in Florida, and it's a gathering of martial arts school owners and fitness professionals. And it's one of those rare events where you actually leave with things that you can use rather than things you'd have to, well, unlearn later. And there were some exceptional people presenting: Chris Rodriguez, Stephen Reinstein, and Melody Johnson. If you've been part of Okami Kai for any length of time, you already know Melody's work has had a real influence on how we operate and how we think about what we're doing here. And there's actually an episode, if you scroll back, you'll listen to an interview that I did with her, and it was absolutely awesome. We've been members of Skills now, and we actually just joined the Skills Premier Institute, which means that we've got more access to even more educational material that involves neuroscience and child psychology. I've interacted with her on Zoom, but I've never met her in person until now. So this was meaningful to be able to sit in the same room. What I want to talk to you about, though, is a moment that happened during one of Chris Rodriguez's sessions. And she said something that it was almost in passing, but it just stuck with me. And it was, get your reps in. She wasn't just talking about physical training. She was using it as a lens for the whole thing. Business, relationships, habits, and she said it so plainly without any fanfare that it took me a second to catch up with how much weight was actually packed into it. We live in a world absolutely saturated with promises of optimization, biohacks, shortcuts, that one thing you're missing, the secret framework the high performers use. And I'm not saying all of it is useless, but I think a lot of it exists to let us feel productive while avoiding the actual work. And the actual work is repetition. It's showing up. It's the reps. I want to give you the real story of why that's true, what the science says, and what it looks like in practice, because it looks different than most people expect. Let me start with a story about a magician. His name is Oz Perlman. He's a mentalist, actually one of the best in the world. And in his book, Read Your Mind, he talked about how he learned his craft, which turns out to be one of the clearest illustrations of how human skill acquisition actually works. He said that when you first try something new, your brain is like an open field covered with snow. Trying to get from one point to another means pushing and fighting through. It's slow, it's exhausting, and it feels almost impossible. But every time you do it again, you're walking the same path. The snow gets a bit more flattened, the route becomes a little clearer, and with enough repetitions, it stops being a path through a field and starts being a proper trail. Eventually, it's easy to get to your destination. And that's not just a metaphor. That's actually what's happening inside your nervous system. What you're building is myelin. Myelin is a fatty sheath that wraps around your nerve fibers. Think of it like insulation on an electrical wire. The more myelin you build around a neural pathway, the faster and more reliably that signal travels. And myelin is only produced through one mechanism: use. Repeated, deliberate use. This is why a beginner doing a basic kata looks like they're assembling furniture from IKEA for the first time. There's no fluency. Every element is separate. Hip, shoulder, arm, wrist, legs, they're all disconnected. But after hundreds and then thousands of repetitions, those signals start traveling together faster, smoother, more automatically. And that kata becomes less about being something that you think about, and it starts being something that you more express. The book, The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle, does an excellent job with this. His central argument is essentially that talent is not a gift. It is a result of deep practice, and deep practice builds myelin. Here's the part we're sitting with. You cannot fake your way to myelin. You can watch videos of someone doing a perfect technique for 100 hours, and your myelin will not budge. You have to do it imperfectly, repeatedly, until it isn't imperfect anymore. This is true for a front kick. It's true for a punch. It's true for a kata. It's also true for staying calm when your kid is melting down. It's true for the confidence you feel walking into a room. These are all, in a neurological sense, skills, and they're all built the same way: reps. Let me ask you something. How many times have you said or thought some version of, "I'll start when I feel ready"? Or more specifically, when you feel motivated? Because that's the story most people are living, waiting for motivation to show up like some reliable colleague who's always late, but you keep scheduling meetings with them anyway. Here's the problem. Motivation is not a precondition for action. It's a byproduct of action. A 2014 study by Fitchell and Sawa on procrastination found that people significantly overestimate how bad they will feel doing a task and significantly underestimate how good they will feel once they start. Every time. Which means we are making decisions based on a feeling that is systematically wrong. The psychological term for what happens when you start something is called activation energy. It's the small initial push required to get something in motion. And the reason it matters is that once you're in motion, a completely different set of neurological processes kicks in. Your dopamine system responds to engagement and not to anticipation. Your mood follows your behavior and not the other way around. I want to say that a little bit more plainly because I think it gets lost. You will not feel like training and then train. Almost nobody does. What actually happens is you train and then you feel like you trained, which is better. You showed up tired and somewhere around the 10th or 12th minute of class, something shifts. That's not magic. That's your brain catching up to what you already have started with your body. Now, I'm not saying motivation is worthless. Moments of inspiration do matter. But reading something that lights a fire in you, being in a room with people who are doing incredible things, those things are real fuel. And honestly, that's what I got from the Elevate seminar. You cannot live on bursts of inspiration. What carries you through the long middle is the habit, the structure, the mat, the scheduled class, the small daily choice to show up. And so as much as I was fired up about the actual event, when I left, I also realized that I have to put systems in place based on what I learned, and I need to keep those systems going. And this is one of the reasons I genuinely believe that training in a martial art is one of the better personal development structures available. Not because of the philosophy, though the philosophy is good, but because the schedule is external. The class, let's say, is on Tuesday. You either go or you don't. You don't have to negotiate with your feelings about it. You just have to get in the car. And that sounds small, but structurally, it's enormous. So, all right, if you're a parent of a student at Okami Kai or any martial arts school, or really in any structured activity with your child, I want to talk to you directly for a few minutes because this section is honestly the one I feel the most strongly about. Your child is going to want to quit. We used to flower it all up. We used to say stuff when people would sign up going, "Oh, talk to us and we'll get through it. They're going to love the activity. And if there's anything that we can do to make their training better, just let us know." But when it comes right down to it, there is going to be a time. There's going to be a time where they're going to say they want to quit. And if they haven't already tried, well, get ready. It's coming. Maybe it'll come on a night when they are tired and the homework wasn't finished and the idea of getting into a uniform sounds like a punishment. Maybe it'll come after a frustrating class where nothing seemed to click and another student seemed to be moving ahead faster. Maybe now that the weather's getting warmer around here, maybe they're going to want to play with their friends more instead of going and doing a structured activity. Maybe it'll come next week, maybe next month, maybe in 6 months, maybe a year from now, maybe before a belt test. And you as the parent are going to feel caught because you want to honor your child's feelings. You want them to have autonomy. You do not want to be the parent who forces something on your kid and causes a resentment that resurfaces 30 years later in a therapy session. So I want to offer you a distinction that I think is genuinely useful here. There's a difference between a child who's been doing something long enough to make a meaningful assessment and a child who is standing at the bottom of the learning curve and looking up and deciding that the view isn't worth the climb. The learning curve in martial arts, like most real skills, is initially uncomfortable. The first few months involve a lot of not knowing what you're doing, which is hard on kids who are used to being competent at things. And that discomfort often expresses itself as, I don't like this, or I don't want to go, or can I try something else instead? What they are often actually feeling is frustration. And frustration in a developmental context is not a stop sign. It's a signal that growth is happening, just like I talked about with the snowfield. The research on what psychologists call productive struggle is pretty compelling. Kids who are allowed to sit with difficulty, who are supported through frustration rather than rescued from it, develop what Carol Dweck at Stanford calls a growth mindset. They start to build an internal narrative that says hard things are things I can get better at. And that narrative, once it's established, transfers. It goes into a classroom. It goes into friendships. You cannot explain growth mindset to a child. They have to feel it for themselves, and they have to go through something hard. So what do you actually do on the night when they don't want to go? First, I'd say don't make it a debate. I've had my fair share of parents that will come to me and say that they asked the child if they felt like going, but that is a question with an obvious answer on a hard night when they don't want to go. So I would highly recommend that that's not what you say or what you ask. Instead, try saying, we're leaving in 15 minutes. Let's get your bag together. You're the parent. Reducing the decision point reduces the friction, and you're the one in charge. Another option, since we're talking about neuroscience and child psychology, is I would say acknowledge the feeling without agreeing with the conclusion. I know you're tired, but I also know you will feel better after class. And that's a very different message than you have to go whether you like it or not. One is honest and supportive, while the other one is a standoff. Thirdly, if your child is consistently miserable, if they genuinely dread going to every single class, that's worth a different conversation. If you're one of our students, talk to me. If you're somewhere else, talk to their instructor. That kind of persistent misery is usually a sign that something in the environment needs adjusting. It doesn't mean that the child needs to be pushed harder. That being said, most of the time, the protest is not that. Most of the time, it's friction. And friction is just resistance to getting the reps in. And getting the reps in is exactly what needs to happen. Remember, with us, you're not keeping your child in a karate class. You're teaching them what it feels like to stay committed to something even when it's hard. And that skill is going to outlive every belt they ever earn. We just in September celebrated our 26th year of operation. And over those years, there's something I've watched happen hundreds of times. We get kids that come in and they're a handful, not in a bad way, just in a human way. They can't sit still, they're distracted easily, they have a hard time with authority or with losing or with being corrected. And they come in every week and we work on their front kick or their kata and we talk about focus and they earn their next stripe or belt. Honestly, some weeks it feels like we're barely moving forward at all. And then one day, a parent comes to me before class and their face is a little different. And they say something like, his teacher told us he started helping other kids when they're confused. Or she didn't get frustrated on the drive here today for the first time in months. Or he told me he was going to keep trying when something was hard because that's what you do at karate. And that's the reps working. Not the flashy kick, not the belt test, the quiet daily practice of showing up or trying again, of choosing to stay in a thing past the point where quitting would have been easier. The same is true for adults. I've had students come in who were going through genuinely hard things, job loss, relationship breakdowns, health scares, and they kept showing up. And they didn't come in and talk about it every class. They came in and trained. And what they were doing, whether they named it or not, was building a place in their life that was reliable, where effort led to result, where their body could do hard things, where they had evidence in their muscles and their nervous system that they were not fragile. Science has a name for this. It's called self-efficacy, a concept developed by a psychologist, Albert Bandura. Self-efficacy is not the same as self-esteem. Self-esteem can be inflated. Self-efficacy is grounded in actual performance history. It's the belief that you are capable, built from the experience of having done capable things. I can't talk an adult student into genuine self-efficacy. I can't post it on a vision board or create a podcast episode like I am now or write it in a newsletter or whatever and all of a sudden have them feeling that self-efficacy feeling. Self-efficacy comes from doing hard things repeatedly and accumulating the internal evidence of your own capability. And martial arts training, structured and consistent, is one of the most efficient ways I've ever seen to build that evidence base. The dojo's a laboratory. It's a controlled environment where you encounter difficulty and move through it week after week. And those experiences do not stay in the dojo. They migrate. They become the way you approach a difficult conversation at work, the way you handle a setback in a project, the way you respond when something doesn't go the way you planned. It builds quietly, steadily, and permanently. That's not a marketing line. That's actually what happens. We've started using the slogan, one class at a time. And it's basically because, and you probably heard it in the ad that we put at the beginning of this podcast. The idea is that everything is being developed every time you come in, every time you put those reps in. We tend to think of progress as something that happens in notable moments, like the belt test, the day you finally land the technique you've been working on for months, the moment your kid spontaneously helps their sibling and you realize something has shifted. But those moments are not where progress is actually created. Those moments are just where it becomes visible. Darren Hardy wrote a book called The Compound Effect, which is the idea that small, seemingly insignificant actions repeated consistently over time produce outcomes that are disproportionately large. Not because any single action is meaningful in isolation, but because of the accumulation. Let's take two people that started training on the same day. One shows up consistently, does the basics, doesn't miss a class unless they're genuinely sick. The other shows up with intensity when they are inspired, but they take breaks when motivation dips. And is always looking for the exciting new technique. After 6 months, the gap between them is already visible. After 2 years, it's dramatic. After 5 years, they're not in the same conversation anymore. The person who got there through consistency will often say something interesting if you ask them. They'll say they didn't feel like they were progressing. It felt like the same class over and over. And then one day they looked up and realized how far they'd come. That's what compounding looks like from the inside. It doesn't feel like progress. It feels like repetition until it doesn't. I didn't get my 7th degree black belt because of the fact that I was motivated to go to every class. Trust me, my karate school is at Allen and Eglinton. So for me to get there, it takes, well, it's really weird, but in the winter, I can get there a lot faster than I can in the summer. Construction and summer traffic is terrible. Like right now, I'm dreading the fact that the weather's getting warmer. It'll take me at least an hour and 15 minutes on a good day to get down to the dojo. There are days it's not the class I don't want to go to, it's the drive. I don't want to drive there and back. There are days where, I don't want to go to class. I don't feel it. There are days I don't want to get crushed in a jiu-jitsu class, but I keep going. In fact, the biggest thing that I can say is that I have a schedule and I know that I am accountable to it. There is no days where I go, I wonder if I'm going to class. It's just, this is the day I go to karate. This is the day I do jiu-jitsu. This is the day I do aikido. And it's on the calendar. This is the day I horse ride. It's on the calendar. I know what I'm doing every day. There's no thinking. In fact, there's times where if you want to book an appointment with Jennifer and me at the same time, then I usually rely on her schedule because she's the one that's got lessons where students cancel and whatever. And I'm the one who knows exactly what they're doing at what time. So saying all that, I want to be clear that I'm not just talking about martial arts. I'm talking about the habit of showing up in your life. This could be reading 30 minutes a day. This could be a time where a parent has a genuine time slot for talking to their child every day. Maybe it's at dinner. Maybe it's before they go to bed. These things compound, and they compound in ways that you cannot see in real time, but are absolutely real. We don't have to chase transformation. We just have to get our reps in. All right, let me land this. I want to come back to the sentence I started with because I don't want it to feel like a motivational poster. Get your reps in is not a battle cry. It's not a push yourself harder and ignore your limits message. It is, I think, actually one of the more compassionate things you can say to someone because it removes the pressure of needing to be great right now. It removes the comparison to where someone else is in their journey. It removes the expectation that you have to feel good to make progress. It just asks you to show up, to do the one thing one more time. For the adults who are listening, who are waiting to feel ready, I'll say it plainly. You will not feel ready before you start. The readiness comes after. It is a product of the doing, not a prerequisite for it. So the most useful thing you can do today is identify the one rep that's available to you and do it. Not the whole program, not the reinvention, just the one available rep. For the parents, I'll say this. The hardest thing about raising a capable human is often doing nothing. Watching your child struggle without rescuing them, holding the line on that class they didn't want to go to, trusting the process before the results are visible, that restraint is a form of love and it pays dividends over a long horizon. There are times now where I have seen my 22-year-old son in particular grow in maturity because he's had to problem solve and he hasn't had daddy holding his hand. For any of our students who have been with us for a while, I think you already know this. And that's that even if you haven't put language to it, you've already accumulated some reps. You've already built something. And so to you, I would say keep going. There is no shortcut. Not in martial arts, not in fitness, not in parenting, not in life, but there is a path. And the path is the same every time you show up. Get your reps in. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Okamikai Chronicles. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're in the Uxbridge area and you've been thinking about getting yourself or your child started in martial arts, come see us. We have a quick start package right now, and that is definitely the right first step to getting you on your path. This has been a Campsall Broadcasting production. If this episode seemed long to you, well, congratulations. You just got some reps in.